Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is Matt's Forward Politics. Thank you guys for joining me today. Originally, I was going to make a video titled My Criticisms of Andrew Yang, but actually the events that have been happening recently I feel like are a little more important than talking about my general criticisms of Andrew Yang, which I think we all have a couple, and to be honest, I have a few myself that I actually will get out there eventually. But the main focus of this video is going to be mainly targeted on how Andrew Yang has handled the MSNBC blackout and how he probably shouldn't have actually gone on their network and spoke with them. I think this was actually a very negative move that is going to negatively impact Andrew's campaign in the long run, and I want to explain why this is. And first, if you're new to my channel, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel, as this will help me out in the future, and it'll make sure that you're notified of my content as I release it. Again, thank you guys for coming back to my channel. All right, let me get into it. So originally, I'm sure most of you guys heard the situation about what happened. Originally, Andrew Yang finally came out and boycotted MSNBC, explaining that they were blocking him out, that they weren't giving him coverage consistent with his polling, and they were, calling him John Yang and other weird things like that, And eventually, this all built up to a point where Andrew Yang had no choice but to call out MSNBC, and this happened right after the debates. And what he did was he made a stipulation with MSNBC. He basically said, I won't be on your channel anymore unless you issue me a public apology for constantly leaving me out and blocking me out, etc., etc. Of course, over the last few days, he explained that his message is more important than the MSNBC blackout, and that he wants to get his message out there to as many people as possible. And while I understand the sentiment, I feel like this was a big misplay, and one that he should have calculated for much more in advance than he actually did. When you look at the MSNBC ratings, for example, it is obviously one of the higher rated networks on television. But in my opinion, Andrew Yang actually boycotting this big network was not a mistake. Actually, it was probably the best decision he made in his campaign so far. Going alongside that, choosing to come back on MSNBC was actually one of his worst decisions he's made in this campaign. See, the issue lies within the party. Right now, you have the Democratic Party that is really solely focused on defeating Donald Trump. And not only that, actually, I think more importantly than defeating Donald Trump, I think everyone in the media believes any candidate that the Democrats choose will defeat Donald Trump. I think this is what they believe. They're not looking for the best candidate to defeat Donald Trump. They're looking for their candidate to defeat Donald Trump. And what Andrew Yang is doing is making this argument that he is the best candidate against Donald Trump. And he's not wrong about that. He is actually definitely right about that. I've looked at all the candidates very closely. Even Bernie has a very, very high chance of losing against Trump. And if you're not on board with that sentiment, there's a lot of people in the United States that do not want Bernie Sanders or his policies to take over the United States. So that's his big issue. He just won't win the general election. Unfortunately, I think Bernie Sanders is actually ruining it for a lot of people. Anyway, back to Andrew Yang. So his first move was to boycott MSNBC after they had blacked him out and unfairly covered his campaign several times. And then he went back on MSNBC to have an interview, which was, I think some Yang members will look at it as, hey, Andrew Yang, any chance he gets to speak is golden. It's great for him. It's his best opportunity to get his message out there. And he happens to be a really intelligent guy who can pretty much back himself out of any situation. He can get himself out of any situation without any real troubles. And this actually works in his favor. However, people are actually starting to take him serious as a candidate, as a contender in the 2020 elections. And mind you, this is not something that the mainstream media wants. They actually want him out of the picture completely so they can focus on their candidates of their choosing. And Andrew Yang is currently kind of disrupting this whole order. They were able to get out Tulsi Gabbard at this point. At this point, Tulsi is barely trying to raise $1 million in the last month of December, and she's actually struggling to hit that goal. Whereas Andrew Yang, I believe he's raised over $5 million just in December alone. The difference is astronomical. If you're looking at Tulsi Gabbard as a serious candidate, something major needs to change in order for her to be taken seriously. Now, as of the last debate, I think we can all agree that Andrew Yang is now being taken as a serious candidate. Even as of the last debate, and this is actually where my point is coming to, as of the last debate, Donald Trump actually He didn't tweet, he Snapchatted about Andrew Yang, but this is the first step in him actually talking about Andrew Yang on Twitter, which is where we want him to talk about Yang at. See, this move to Snapchat about Andrew Yang is actually very strategic for Donald Trump. He has been ignoring Andrew Yang every single chance he gets, and he's obviously watched every single debate up to this point. It's not like Donald Trump doesn't know who Andrew Yang is. He actually knows very well who Yang is. He's just chosen not to talk about him or mention him by name up till the last debate. We finally got Donald Trump to snap about Andrew Yang. The next step would have been Twitter. And how would this happen? It would happen by Donald Trump agreeing with Andrew Yang about the media. This is the first thing that got Donald Trump to talk about Andrew Yang was the second Andrew Yang bashed the media, Donald Trump snapped about Andrew Yang, and this brought a lot of attention to Yang, whether it's good or bad. Doesn't matter. Really, any type of mentioning from Donald Trump is actually going to be in favor of Yang, regardless of the type of mentioning it is from Trump. So this brings me to the golden opportunity that was missed by Yang. In this battle with MSNBC, Yang could have actually got Trump to tweet about him if he had pushed it further. If he had doubled down on him boycotting MSNBC. I mean, at this point, I just want to point out that no one agrees with the narrative that the mainstream media is giving. I don't want to say everyone, but people on the internet in particular are very cautious of the information that they're given by mainstream media, especially MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, all of the mainstream media. Everyone is highly skeptical of the information you get from the sources, especially Donald Trump. This is my point. If Yang could have got Donald Trump talking about him, that would have been more coverage for Yang than any mainstream media source. In fact, all the mainstream media would have been talking about how Trump tweeted about Yang, and this would have exploded his coverage. I think he missed this opportunity. Trump was on this path to start tweeting about Andrew Yang, and now that Yang went and started playing nice with MSNBC and he's no longer boycotting them, and he actually never got his apology, why would Trump care to tweet about Yang anymore? He wouldn't. Why would he? It's like, oh, you know what, that guy, he was talking about how bad the mainstream media is, and he maybe has the right idea, but you know what, he just backed off last second, and he threw in the towel. Now he's just, now to a lot of conservatives in particular, he's going to look a little bit weaker. And Donald Trump can come back to this moment and say, look, hey, fake news, CNN, fake news, everyone, fake news, Washington Post, fake news. Who else is going to call out the fake news media? I thought maybe Yang would have, but you know what? He lost that opportunity. And this is a big deal. You guys might not realize how big of a deal this is, especially when it comes to the general election. This is Yang's first big mistake that he's taken in this campaign. He really shouldn't have gotten to the boycott with MSNBC if he wasn't willing to see it through to the end. Is there a way he can turn this around? It's kind of tough, because the interview that he had, actually, in my opinion, you might feel differently about this, but in my opinion, that was a terrible interview. That did not help his campaign at all. I don't see anyone that regularly watches MSNBC looking at Andrew Yang and being like, oh yeah, I agree with him. You know what they're going to be doing? They hear this moderator that they listen to all the time being critical on Andrew Yang. They hear him trashing Yang after the interview, claiming that Yang is possibly getting fake black voters. This is going to hurt him more than help him. And not only that, he initiated the attack against MSNBC and didn't deliver. This is a big issue. Yang can't do this again. If he does this again, it's over for his campaign. The reason why I'm supporting Andrew Yang, despite the fact that I actually have criticisms of him, is because I think universal basic income is bigger than him. It's bigger than any of us could ever realize. Now, I doubt Andrew Yang will see my video, but if he does, for some magical reason, Yang, I urge you to really look at all Americans a little more closely. Not just the Democratic Party, not just the people currently supporting you, but potential voters in the general election is the area you need to start focusing on more and more. Because as the primaries come along, at this point, once we're approaching January, most people actually start making up their mind about a month in advance before voting actually starts. So for the early states, a lot of these people are actually in this process of finally making up their minds. I don't think you're going to gain any more support by going on MSNBC and trying to convince people that have already seen you at their debate. The loyal MSNBC watchers already watched the debate. They already saw how poorly MSNBC is treating you. And now you just went on another interview to reinforce the way MSNBC is treating you, which, in my opinion, just shows you as a weaker candidate than you actually are. Please take this into mind, guys. I am 100% for Andrew Yang, but he cannot keep making these same mistakes. He has done a phenomenal job up to this point in making as little mistakes as possible, but this little clash with MSNBC did not work in his favor. It is actually going to backfire on him in the long run. Let's be more cautious next time, please. I know this is kind of a controversial topic, and a lot of people want to look at the interview as more positive than negative, but in my view, it was more negative than positive. It was a mistake on Andrew's campaign, and he should really consider how he handles these situations in the future. Really consider the bigger picture. The bigger picture is him becoming president. The bigger picture is not even him winning the primary. That's like an intermediary part that he has to hit. It's not the big picture. The big picture is the general election, and we have to keep that in mind. We cannot compromise the general election. All right. Anyway, next video coming out in the next day or two. Catch you guys later.